unfortunately able to start in about 10 minutes late. Thank you all for being here. I will turn it over immediately to Joe for the financials for February and March, please.
All right, good evening. I'm just going to touch on February and then go over a few things in March. February, our cash and securities was up to $3,359,978.22. Again, we are way ahead on our salaries from Chatham County. I'll get into that a little more later. So for the month of February, we actually had a loss of $29,212. For the year to date, it was a loss of $50,617, but we had budgeted a loss of $28,692. And again, most of that is the timing difference with transportation because we did the percentages for the budget. Now moving on to March, which is a much because of the purchase of the house, of course, our cash and securities totals up to $2,936,652.94. For the month, we had an income of $74,718.42. We had only budgeted an income of $29,101. Or I'm sorry, for the year, that was $29,101.29. We had budgeted $20,552. So for the year, we're now ahead of budget, $8,548.37. But what I do want to point out is for the budget for the year, we budgeted $5,719,000 for income. The Chatham County budget that we get every month in December, they had the number at $5,471,656, which when we had our meeting, that kind of raised a few eyebrows, because that's a difference of $247,344, which would have meant you actually budgeted a loss, and that's not very good. And then it changed in January, it changed in February, and again, it changed in March. And now for the latest budget we got from the county, they're budgeting our income at $5,607,237. So now the difference in what we budgeted the income would be and what they're actually giving us is $111,763. And then I want to get to of the $5,607,237 we say we're going to get, we've only used $3,454,883. So we actually got $2,148,754 for the last 3 months of salaries.
I'm going to mix up the agenda a little bit. I have someone who has to leave a little bit earlier, so if there are no questions, I have a motion to accept the financials for February and March of 2023.
Make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I would also like to go ahead and everybody received the financials for February. Are there any changes, questions, or concerns about them? Can I have a motion to move those? Minutes. I said financials, I apologize.
Make a motion to approve.
Second?
Okay.
The next one is the,
And one thing.
absolutely.
We're getting ready to kick out the next budget for the next fiscal year. We've been playing with, since COVID, about $750,000 of COVID money that we used to not get. And as you see, they took away $111,763 of that already. So I would caution that that extra 640 may disappear at any time.
Thank you. I'd like to go ahead and move a motion to adopt the resignations and hirings of staff that we have already handled by email. Resignations of Sophie Marcy, special education teacher, Amanda Pierce, our receptionist, Natalie Webster, teacher, and the hiring of Kendra Keenan, if I say that correctly, who will be joining us as a teacher next year. So if I could just have someone move those.
Make a motion to approve. Wow.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Who was the second one?
It was Latoya. The next one is the Year 2 planning grant that is part of the replication study that we have been engaged with this entire year. They need a specific motion to be able for us to accept that grant and all the work that the board has been doing on that. So the motion reads, we accept the Year 2 planning grant for the intended purpose of supporting TIMA's strategic growth. Can I have a motion to move and accept? Second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then I'm going to go back to the plan and turn it over to Peter to start with the charter review. Sure. Thank you for letting me share that.
So on Wednesday, April 12th, good evening, everyone, sorry. I had an opportunity to go to the Chatham County Civil Board offices and at their informal session, it was our opportunity to talk about TIMA. Each year, we do this twice a year, and this was the time for us to talk about our performance on the Chevron report, which is the way that the district has indices for how we're doing. Blue flags are exceeding, green flags are meeting, yellow flags are things they're concerned about, of course, red flags are things that are potential problems that we need to resolve, or at least demonstrate to them how we're going to resolve them. We've done well with the district. We're blue and green flags in all areas. Student achievement is grayed out right now because they're not looking at what student performance is for them. They don't have markers and indicators during COVID, so they're not looking at our indicators. The other thing that we did have to speak to is the last 2 years of our findings during our audit process, specifically looking at our investment accounts and how the sweeps and investment accounts are going. We're able to talk about the meetings that we've had this year with financial controls, and also that we anticipate that resolving things related to our audit. So we also talked to them about the potential of contract services for financial, which is something we're going to talk about this evening. They were very interested in how we are doing as an Apple Distinguished School. They had questions about that. They had questions about what it looks like as far as the families that we support that live here on TIMA. There were questions about the data that we have for the increase in that since the school has opened. And then one of the questions they asked about specifically was transportation and what kind of impact do we think it's had on us for the ability to continue to provide transportation, even though that's been at cost. And so Laura and I had a chance to take all of their questions and respond. And then there was one other. The board chair, Roger Moss, asked specifically, how did we accomplish having 100% of our staff say that they would like to return to our school? And so I was able to talk to him about that, but then we were having a parent plug-in the very next day. I invited him to come out and listen to our parents and listen to how we develop our school culture. And he showed up and came out, listened to some parents and some really good feedback, and was really impressed with the way our parents questioned and kind of dive into how we hire and how we onboard and how we support colleagues. So it was a really good presentation. And we had a chance to have some really good follow-up with them. They were thankful to get our response with the data to kind of close out that presentation.
As you know, we've been involved in a strategic planning process since about the October timeframe. Over 6 months, we held 5 meetings with about 20 community members, including parents, but also people from across a cross-section of community. We had maritime industry experts, we had representation from the library, and a lot of locals on the island. That distilled into 5 key themes. You'll see these here, students, faculty, operations, and then transparency and communications both externally and internally. So when we aggregated that and had a lot of back and forth iterative approach to the wording and kind of what those actually included, we came up with these 5 goals. Another input to this were trends in education, the requirements of our charter and the Chevron report that Mr. Ulrich mentioned earlier, and just how we will elevate our goals to both accomplish those and look forward as a school community. So we have, and I believe this is now the first thing you'll vote on when you get to motions. So, please take some time to read the language. I know you've had these in your packets for about a week. The first one around students is shepherding empowered learners. What this looks like is that they will be engaged in rigorous and innovative learning anchored in problem solving with a career component, so exposing them to opportunities for the future. When we talk about our faculty, elevating the teaching profession, so that is retention, attraction, diverse in thought, and leaders in their content area, their classroom, community, and the world. When we talk about operations, we're looking both at a sustainable future, so making sure that we have a sustained organization that we can build on, and that includes expanded reach. This is something we already do when schools come and tour and look at how we implement STEAM in this building. And so we want to really embrace that and move forward with it. So that's designing and pursuing growth and improvements that empower people and efficiently utilize resources in our local community and beyond. And then when we get to the communication and transparency pieces, number 4 is the mutually beneficial community connections. And this includes both strategic partnerships and philanthropic goals. So that's where fundraising sits. And then 5 is the engagement of students and families through purposely connected culture. So this embodies our internal LYP system. Athletics would be incorporated in here, academics, competitions, things that foster a spirit of pride between the students and faculty. And then just maintaining that engagement even in their curricular materials. So any questions on this? Or I don't know if any of you have read it or engaged, but that's our proposed framework for the 5 goals moving forward for the 5 years.
And one of the things,
Before we go on, is this the end of the strategic plan, or you?
well, I just wanted to speak to this one more before we move on to the next piece. So when we start talking about how we want to accomplish these goals, there's also the idea that as we're engaged in reports to the board, as we're requesting funds for spending, that we'll be able to tie them directly back to each of these strategic goals over the next 5 years. We'll be able to see exactly where the spending, the time, the resources, and those things go related to accomplishing these specific measures.
Mm-hmm.
So what you actually see going forward is these 5 goals that are overarching, with the grids coming below, of where things like you mentioned, and then but also where our efforts as a board will go and where we can support making these goals happen in each one of those areas. So I'd love questions. Laura is the expert. She's done an amazing job in drafting this strategic plan for us. It's the first one we've had in 6 years. 7. So this is a big accomplishment for us this year. So any questions for Laura either at this time?
And I'll add too, I mean, we will take these and down to the granular level. What does success look like? What are the objectives that underpin this so that we can accomplish it? And you'll see that as it is evolved operationally.
I have a question, but I think it's a great idea for us to be able to see the 5 goals and stuff so that when we actually do things, we're able to link it back to where it actually fits. So I think that'd be great for stakeholders, parents, students, everyone. So job well done.
Thank you.
With that, can I ask for a motion to approve the new strategic plan for TIMA? Second? Thank you. All in favor? Thank you so much, Laura.
It's my pleasure. I enjoy these things, so
You did a good job.
thank you.
So this is the part each year when I talk to the board as we are on the cusp of going through our budget process, and I do an expenditure request. It happens a lot of different ways in a lot of different organizations. I front load with a lot of information so that as we're looking at potential spending, the board has information. When you receive the budget packet, it is with this information already included so that you clearly know where the money is intended to go. I did want to start with sort of where we are so far. With our current school year, we had actually only budgeted $20,000 in grants. If you go back and look at the budget, we only said that we're going to have $20,000 in grants. If you look at in-kind this year with what we've been able to pull in through facilities, state, city of Tybee, everything with STEAM, what's happening with our title. So Title II is staff development, Title IV is enrichment for our school, and health and PE grants, and of course our strategic growth. You can see that with in-kind donation of services, we're at $339,186. But if we're just talking about straight cash coming into the school through grants, $259,186 for our development for grants this year.
Wow.
Oh, sorry.
How did you do that? That's amazing.
Thanks. I didn't. So part of this is obviously like any grant, there's an application process, right? And one of the things that we talk to our colleagues about is if schools only have a few different revenue streams, right? We have enrollment, we have straight donations, fundraisers, and grants. And a lot of times we'll say, oh, that'd be a great grant for us to do. Let's go after that. Well, of course, that's someone doing that. So it's a mixture of executive team members, up to and including myself, but of course, people that work in strategy and development, curriculum. And then on top of that, it is a matter of sometimes teachers just finding out about a grant, completing all of that. We go through the process. And of course, the back end of a grant is what most of us lose body weight about. Like, you know, are we making sure that we're following the process? If it's a reimbursable grant, are we giving everything that we need to, especially federal dollars, right? So it's just a process that we're all pretty familiar with and we try to engage in. Obviously, it's also depending on time. And if you're a classroom teacher and you're trying to teach, it's challenging to do that. So part of the goal of the executive team this year has been to support teachers that are going after these grants and also to continue to go after the ones that we knew were available for us.
And I'll add, there's actually 50,000 in grants we're waiting to hear back from for this year.
So what is the chance of repeating stellar performance next year?
So we have actually, and that's a few slides back, but I'm going to get there.
Okay.
No, it's okay. We're actually, instead of forecasting $20,000, we're actually forecasting a minimum of $125,000 for budget, which I know might seem low looking at this, but budgets are, of course, are a process and we have to apply and we have to be, you know, fairly certain that we'll be competitive. But we're at least starting there. We want to budget there. So.
We
Mike, you had it.
we
I'm
also
sorry.
have already applied for the City of Tybee grant for this coming year. We will find out first of July, right?
Yes.
So that's an annual application that we do, and they're very encouraging of us applying for that grant.
And I had a chance to go and present last year as well. They did the process a little different. So Brigitte actually went with me and we sat and they had really good questions about how we intended to spend the dollars and what it was going to go for and how that would enrich the school and the island. And so it was really great to be able to participate in that. And of course, they approved and they doubled what they gave us the year before.
Again, Todd, I'm assuming all these are pretty much a one-year grant that, you know, it's a one-time thing. We're going to have that expenditure in that, you know, calendar year of
Right.
receiving it.
Yes.
Are there grants out there that, like, you know, you can get repetitive besides Tybee or any of them? That,
There's not really like carryover grants like that. Now, some of the state and federal grants we apply every year to make sure that they know that, yes, this is indeed money that we want to spend, like the safety grant, things like that. It's still dependent upon legislators saying yes, money being available, all of those things, right? So that type of low-hanging fruit grant-wise, we're always going to continue to go after that because it makes sense for us to do that. Some of the other things though, like I don't know that they're gonna have a health and PE equipment grant next year. And that's okay, but like certainly it was worth it for us to go after that, and especially because we got it. And then we were able to construct a Gaga ball pit and some other things. If you guys haven't seen that, it's like dodgeball in a cage. It's pretty amazing. So it's also really good that we're in an environment where colleagues are pushed to be innovative. Like we're asking them to consider, as an educator, what do you want your classroom to look like? What do you want this learning experience for children to look like? And if that has money attached to it, let's figure out if there's a way for us to find money for that. A lot of people will give to schools, classrooms, teachers, kids. Let's see if we can exhaust that. I don't think we've exhausted it, but I think we did a pretty good job this year. So next is more related to our like straight development. When you're thinking about fundraising, giving, obviously it was our first year to do a direct ask through the Maritime Fund, which we only did once. We actually talked about asking twice, and then we've really been wrestling with, our parents do so much, and the majority of what our donors were in the winter when we asked were parents. And so we're like, okay, let's be grateful for that, but parents are not necessarily our target audience for giving. So we did very well, and we got $81,000 less in kind. Giving Day overall, just on the one day, we got $20,500, which was fantastic for us. Scholarships, which was for field trips, boosters. So obviously just overall 81,000, and then fundraisers totaling 9,464 for a total of just straight cash, $90,000, 726. And I would say, we talked today, we're still anticipating, it's not reflected here just because we're still getting numbers in, but there's about $10,000 more at a minimum that we'll still get before we cut the books this year. We have yearbook sales that are starting to still rolling in. We know that is netting us around $3,000. We know that we have the beach bike raffle, which usually does well each year, still happening. So, and there was one other.
Yeah, the baseball night was
baseball,
not, yeah.
Right, yeah, for sure. And
Actually, nor was Tybee Idol included in this. I
and
figured out today.
formal boards. So we've got some great boards. You guys have seen them before you leave. Yeah, so there's a minimum of $10,000 more that's still going to be added to. So if you look total development this year, if you're thinking of fundraising, grants, in total, straight cash, over $350,000 by the end of the year, which for a school that hasn't traditionally spent a lot of time focusing on fundraising post-COVID, this was very exciting for us to see.
The beauty about this too is, if you look at these numbers and you now have that year to talk about, like, look, this was our first year actively going out there. This is the amount of money that we raised. Laura's got the information package that she provided to all of us to go out there and raise additional funds. I think it would be good to add to that, what have these funds done for TIMA, so that we're ready for next year to go back and make this a stronger plan.
Yeah, and I've set a goal for the end of May to do an annual report. And so that'll include kind of an impact statement and.
So this is an amazing first year baseline.
We've spent a lot of time talking this year about cultivating a culture of philanthropy. Laura termed that way back, I think, in August, and just really getting the community used to contributing in some way to our fiscal stewardship and the things that we're able to accomplish. And bless you, as Brigitte just said, $349,000 for our first year, I think, is a really great start. And then, of course, as we consider thinking about potential construction projects in the future and how we want to continue to serve our families, this is a great baseline for us to consider. As I said earlier, the funding streams for schools are pretty typical for us. 87.2% is the traditional way that all public schools raise money, which is through our enrollment and the services that students are provided, whether that's special education, gifted, remediation, or none of those things. And then of course, we have grants, donations, and fundraisers. And you can see overall, we have about 13% of our operating income that is coming from what our faculty is doing to support bringing in donors to our school. So we're at a transition point. We have laid the groundwork to do a lot of really positive things for our school within the last few years. But we're also thinking about looking ahead and what do we need to do to be sustainable. A lot of the work that we've been able to engage in this year with Bellwether has been specific to what is the succession plan for the school? What does the school look like with leadership, with the services that you provide, the programming you want to offer? Like, how does the school exist outside of the people that are maybe doing the job right now? Even though they were also very excited that we had 100% of our staff recommit. When you think about the average school has 20 to 25% of its faculty each year roll over. That was very exciting for them to see that, but they wanted to talk about what does the organization look like in a more sustainable way. So one of the things, obviously, that they noticed as well is some of the things that happened with our audit and those material findings. And obviously, we've had a pretty big change within the last couple of years with leadership in our finance area and also onboarding a new bookkeeper. And so when you have that happen in any organization, I think any organization that would go through a transition with one person related to finance would be a challenge. Of course, we went through 3 with our treasurer, our bookkeeper, and our CFO. And so one of the things that we know is really important to demonstrate the fiscal stewardship that the school has is being able to report out to our LEA how we're doing. Unfortunately, right now, the LEA says you have 2 material findings in your audits for the last year looking at your investment accounts. So we started thinking about what is a more comprehensive way to consider our financial services. And there happens to be an organization called EdTech that is out of Atlanta, but I think they actually they serve nationwide. And they work specifically with charter schools on sort of threading that needle of working with the authorizer, working with the governing board, and of course, working with the school. And when you think about all of the comprehensive package that would have to be involved in those types of financial services, having just a competent CFO is not enough. They're looking for accounting services, bookkeeping, payroll parts, and of course, financial officer, where we're talking about looking at budget forecasting and potential revenue streams and all of those things that go into that. And so if we were to hire for that, if I were to hire at least 3 people to do those jobs, I would be looking at anywhere from $200,000 to $270,000 for a CFO, an accountant, and a bookkeeper to provide these services. Go back just a second. Because it's really important, obviously, for us to have expert knowledge for charter finances. It helps us, it helps the board make good decisions about how we're spending. And it's also important for us to sort of be mindful of what that cost might be. Also, if I hire these 3 people, I have no office space for them. I guess they'll work in the corner in each of.
It was a new desk today.
Yeah, we found a new desk today, which, by the way, there are refreshments on. So, thanks.
We have board chef though.
Laura has multiple offices. She is one of our most prodigious and transient workers. You can find her at many locations throughout campus during the day. So we have obviously spoken with this organization, and I have a 77-page prospectus from them and an offer. I'm happy to share that with anyone that wants to look at it. Laura and I, of course, went through and pulled out the salient points that we knew the board needed to be mindful of if we decide to support this expenditure request. But it is things, well, I'll talk about that in a moment. The first year is $120,000, which when you get over the sticker shock of that, let me know. It is definitely a very different type of service than what we've had before. And then the second year is $126,000. Now, there's a $7,500 charge that first year to move everything over into the accounting software that they use. I believe it's Oracle. But that $7,500 is actually something that we think we can pay for another way. And I'll talk to you about that later. But at the end of the 2 years, we're free to renegotiate the contract. We're free to take pieces of services that we feel like are really good for us and renegotiate that. We're also free, obviously, to re-up for the whole package again. I'm sure they'd be happy with that. But it really does, I think, benefit us to think about looking long-term and looking forward with our finances. They have a lot of expertise in charter schools and cash flow projections and financial modeling and forecasting, which I think will benefit us with the decisions that I know the board is going to have in front of them within the next 2 years.
So the district recommended this particular company, they reached out to me and recommended this company for us to go forward. They worked with them in other places. I understand they bridge some of the communications even between them and the state, not just us and the
Yeah, we
state.
go to the next slide. Laura, we talk about
All those
Yeah.
pieces to it. We have local charter schools that use them here in Savannah, and I did reach out to them to check on how they felt their relationship was, and they're all positive reports.
And how about their audits too? I'm
They
assuming
manage
it's
that.
exactly they're getting the blue flags.
They are.
Yeah, that's what
There. Obviously, I mean, this is a truncated list of everything that they gave us. I mean, I would say that from page 31 on, it's a lot of graphs and charts and the examples of how and what they would present to the board and to our families. But there's a lot of services that they provide that I think are very important for you to consider when you think about budgeting and financial reporting alone, which is time consuming and critically important for you to be able to make good decisions. They support negotiations related to MOUs, right? Which is really important when we're thinking about how we want to connect with other organizations, especially if there is a dollar transaction for that. And I'm gonna actually give you an example in just a bit. They'll assist the school and the board with financial planning and budget scenario development, in addition to budgeting, which I'm sure Joe will tell you is a pretty heavy lift. And school budgets are not like other budgets, and they're a moving target. So it's definitely great to partner with someone that has that experience, especially in the charter lane, because they're used to being that in between the school, the governing board, and the school system. Board meeting support. It says they'll attend at least 2/3 of meetings, but it's my understanding from the local school, they've been at all of their meetings to talk about how things are going and to share their reports. Facilities, obviously facility proposal for the LEA, and negotiate deals with the LEA regarding facilities, which could be beneficial for us. Compliance and grant administration. So just more as you asked earlier about the grant side of it and how do we do it. I mean, obviously it's a lot of hard work, but it would be great to have a partner organization that can come through and say, yes, with your grants, make sure this is done, make sure this is submitted, make sure it goes to this. I mean, all of those things that we're learning and doing together and staying compliant, but having a partner with that would be very, very valuable.
I don't know if you've asked this yet, Peter, but would they be willing to share, like schools that are similar to TIMA, what kind of grants that they're seeing them apply for, and recommending that, don't forget, because I know with grants, it's always hard finding them sometimes.
Yeah,
And they're out there, but there's not a main site you can always go and find them.
I would think that they would do that. One of the things that they talked about is giving us ideas for new revenue streams. That could be grants. Obviously, if it's a competitive grant,
Yeah.
we are all mindful of that. But I would say too, one of the people that work in the organization actually worked for the Department of Ed when TIMA opened, and has, I think, a very special place in his heart for our school. So it was really interesting when Rajiv was contacted to, reach out to the people at this organization for potential help, and that he had moved into this organization. He knew all about us. Sorry. So, as I said before we started talking about contracted financial services, when we have had discussions this year about this potential for support, what we've looked at is the support roles to help us be sustainable. So contract finances support our requirements. Again, having those experts in charter school finance, financial planning, and board governance and succession planning, especially as it relates to money. SRO. So that stands for School Resource Officer. When we had an opportunity to sit and talk to the Savannah Chatham County Public School System way back in August, when we were talking about our charter renewal, one of the recommendations or observations was that you don't have a campus police officer. And we said, no, we don't have a campus police officer. And they recommended that we really should have a campus police officer. Well, I've had an opportunity to talk with Chief Hayes, the new chief installed here on Tybee Island, and we do have a need for having an officer here on campus. I think many of you know we have a very interesting makeup for our campus, where we have an intersection in the middle of our campus, and we have a lot of portable buildings, and we have students that traverse all parts of the island all day. And when there have been incidents of school violence in other locations, I average anywhere from 6 to 10 emails within an hour of the announcement of school violence being perpetrated somewhere else. And parents are very curious about what we're going to do. And I don't know that a uniformed armed officer is the best solution in every environment, but I do think that having an authoritative presence on campus would send a very clear message that we, just like everyone else, consider the safety and security of the children that attend school here and the staff that work here as a priority. So that is a resource officer.
Peter, if I may interject there too,
Go.
this is not an optional recommendation from the district. Let me just be honest about that. This is in 2 years when we go back to renew our charter, that will be part of that discussion again. The resource here would be shared with Tippy. So we wouldn't have to hire someone and put on payroll with everything associated to that.
Will it be shared with the district?
No.
With
So-
yeah, increase.
Right.
a new acronym.
So, hey, yeah.
Right.
So you have somebody local who knows the environment outside of you, who'll be the first one to know what's going on the island anyway, where, I mean, if we were, another option is to collaborate with the district and their campus police division to basically pay for a consultant, right, is what I would compare it to. You wouldn't be paying all their benefits, you would be paying for the service.
So if we were to partner with Savannah Chatham County Public Schools, they never gave me a pricing structure for that. But
Doesn't mean they'll pay for it.
no, it does not. Nice try.
I know, right?
Yeah, very strong recommendation.
Nice try. No, but when we have received other services, like we have to, so I think many of you know we have option A for special education. That's paid for everything. Like we pay for the benefits, we pay for the retirement, we pay for the aspect of their insurance and salary. I would imagine, since that's through Savannah Chatham, that it would be the exact same model, that they would expect us to pay all of that. What I would like to do and what I'm proposing is a cost sharing agreement with Tybee Island Police Department. And what we would do is the officer would only be stationed here. And this is based on the strength of the language in the MOU, which again, we just talked about having somebody help us with that, right? But the officer would be dedicated here when children were here. And we would only pay a portion of the salary based on those days. And the benefit for us is that we're not necessarily shouldering the responsibility of onboarding someone, paying for retirement, paying for the other pieces. They get to call themselves a Tybee Island Police Department officer working for the city. They still get that retirement and benefit package, and we're only paying for the days that we need them, which Chief Hayes is very excited about that possibility and has already reached out to one of her officers about attending SRO school and would like to move forward if the board approves the expenditure request. So.
And I don't think, and it will, if we don't do it, it's the right thing to do in today's environment. And it is, I believe, a service that we owe to our parents to take a concern off their shoulders of what's happening to our children.
And I guess I look at the response, if there's an officer out of Savannah, that 2 to 5 minute window, it's gonna be the officers on Tybee Island. And I think there's gonna be a lot more collaboration between our SRO and our folks there that will be very helpful in that window.
And I don't think, Peter, you could have found a better option, honestly. I mean,
I agree.
the synergy between the police department here, having that connectivity with the other officers, God forbid if there's ever a need, but.
Well, and we've talked about this in the executive team too. Campus police officers from Savannah have driven out here before when students are here. And they see kids walking up and down the street, and they see kids walking over to the beach, and they're like, what are y'all, what's going on? And I'm like, oh, it's school. They're like, okay, and off they go, which is great, it's fine. But obviously we do things a little differently here. It will be amazing to have an officer that connects with our students, knows our teachers, and knows the lay of our campus and where our kids go to shoot movies, to collect data at the marsh. There's so many things that this could be very beneficial for us. I'm just very excited that the city was willing to look at this partnership and potentially enter into this cost sharing agreement for us. Basically, they would just invoice us each month and we'll pay it.
I bet we get a grant for it too.
I think so too. There is a safety grant out there right now, but there's some language about personnel, so we have to look at that. But I definitely think that there is some other safety money that we can pursue related to grants. I'm sorry, Dr.
No, I was gonna say, I think it's a great idea and very much needed. So you have the option to do what you're doing, recommending them, so it's not in Savannah Chat and say, well, you have to do it this way?
No.
They would like to do it. They would like us.
I was just curious. Talk
So, and we immediately opened the link of communications with the district. And I think, and this would be the ball being in their court to provide us with details, so we're just moving along, but it never stated that.
Right, and I'll say too, Chief Hayes, obviously newly enshrined as chief, but she knows Chief Enoch well. And when she and I met and spoke, we've met a couple of times about this. She has actually spoken to Chief Enoch, and he's supportive of this too. It isn't, we're obviously mindful of the importance of our relationship with the school system, but they do give us some autonomy to do the things that we need to. And I think it makes sense to everyone that an island officer is at the island school.
I agree.
Next is a student information specialist, which doesn't come anywhere close to really telling you what this person does. In any other school right now, especially public schools, this is a role that every school has. They're responsible for inputting, processing, reporting student data. Now, that is everything from grades on report cards to attendance for every student in the building. It also includes making sure that when we build the master schedule, that how we say we're going to get money is actually how kids are scheduled so that we continue to get money, or that we maximize their schedule. So a gifted student who has 4 segments related to gifted versus a student who has 6 segments of gifted could be an additional $1,000 in income, but that's not just a straight thing where you build a schedule and you throw kids' names in. There is a process of guiding and making sure. Doc is like nodding her head over here because in so many schools, it is a make or break position. And in our organization, we have obviously had someone that's been doing this on top of doing many, many other things like payroll, things like nutrition services, things like ensuring that we have maintenance services and custodial agreements and like all of these things that are also important to a school being successful. So the idea is delineating someone that would only solely have that responsibility, and there is more than enough work when it relates to 9 grade levels of 420 plus children every day where we have to capture that data and report it. I think I gave Brigitte a sample report that they just sent today that went out to all information specialists. And it's about 4 pages of things that they have to do between now and the end of the school year. Leader in residence. So when we were talking with Bellwether and they interviewed staff and they talked about how everyone feels supported, one of the things that they were excited about was this implementation of the new executive team this year. They thought that was great, that you guys have some support to do things like strategic planning and to offload some of the things with the new athletics program. That's really great. But they said your organizational structure itself is the principal at top and 47 people report to you. And they were really curious about how efficient everyone thought that was as far as getting things done. And they actually made a recommendation that it should be a principal with 2 different administrators and then other people. And we accepted that feedback and we said, well, thanks. But that's not really in line with who we say we are. We entertain and host a lot of schools from a lot of different communities throughout the state of Georgia and even South Carolina and Florida. And one of the things that we often notice is we'll get a lot of teachers, anywhere from 4 to 12 teachers that will come, and we won't get an administrator. We'll get maybe like an academic coach or a professional learning person. And part of that is because there's not a lot of leadership bench out there, if you'll excuse the term, but there's just not a lot of areas to pull from for school leaders. So when you start talking about designing a culture where you value teachers and you trust teachers and you look at student performance through a lens of them problem solving and collaborating together, teachers understand that, but then they don't really know how to go back and implement that. And we get a lot of conversation from people about, well, what would it look like for a leader to learn these things? In a school where you have 100% of your staff saying that they want to come back, there's still a very creative group of educators that talk about leadership. And many of them say, I would like to go into leadership. I either want to go into community leadership, or I want to go into curriculum leadership. And some of them are like, I want to be a school leader. And it's challenging because there's obviously ways and paths for people to accomplish that, but there's not a way to indoctrinate someone into sustaining what you believe in as a philosophy unless they're acting in that role. So one of the things that we've talked about is with these teachers on campus that say they want to be leaders, we can create this leader in residency program where if you're a teacher and say that you want to be a school leader, you still make your teacher's salary. But you engage in the work that is necessary to learn how to be a school leader while you enroll in the Georgia Leadership Certification Program. It's really valuable to have someone that is doing the work to understand about monitoring instruction, designing curriculum, supporting teachers, connecting with families, presenting to this body, going in the community. Those are all things that are skill sets that if you want to have a successful leader and you're thinking about a sustainable organization, then we should provide an opportunity for someone to do that. So it's intentional for us, for our capacity building, but it also helps us to grow someone in leadership for our organization. One of the things in a one-to-one environment, you have a technology where everybody has iPads, including teachers, is that technology is going to break. It's either going to physically break, quite literally, a screen or a keyboard, or it's going to break and not work. It won't connect to the network. It won't download whatever it needs to. You can't use this app at the right time. And surprisingly to a lot of you, maybe, the person that's doing that for us is one of our highest paid people right now. Because that's just how it has transpired for us over the last 4 years. And when you think about the work that needs to be done and how we can support teachers and students in getting devices back quickly, because an insurance claim and putting something out and then getting it back and then redelivering it to students, all of that process takes a fair amount of time. Putting screen protectors on screens, believe it or not, but that's a service we provide. Like, we do these things because it helps us minimize that damage later, right? But the other issue about having someone part-time in this position is that we need to have a more thoughtful approach to technology. I am grateful to this board that every year I have said, spend more money on technology. You've been like, okay, go ahead, spend it. Thank you. We're doing amazing things, obviously. Kids are doing really well. Faculty is doing a lot of amazing and dynamic things with technology. However, we don't have a plan for technology and what we need to do. So having someone come in and focus specifically on that part-time means tasking them with developing a technology plan that they can present to the executive team and to the board about forecasting our technology use, how we will continue to offload and recoup some of the spending on technology, and how we'll onboard and refresh technology. And then finally, the communications and development coordinator. This is an hourly position that we're looking for someone to come in and support the work of engagement and support the work of development. Obviously, in a lot of organizations, you have someone that comes in that specifically provides support to bring more money into the organization, and that's what this development coordinator role would do. They would report directly to the director of strategy as well as the director of engagement, so that we can continue to look at both internal and external ways to develop some of the money and the revenue that we want to bring in as a school. Obviously, these are, well,
It's hard to tell.
hard to tell here. So highlighted new positions, the SRO that we discussed, which is the Tybee Island Police Department, cost sharing, the contracted financial services, the leader in residence, student information systems, and the part-time technology coordinator and the communications and development coordinator. These exist already. Obviously, the operations manager, assistant principal, director of growth and planning, the director of engagement. There's some slight title changes for the people that are already in those positions doing that job.
Question.
Yes.
So this contract finance, they're gonna give you like one point of contact, or do you get like one for each one of those little buckets that's in there? How do they present that to you?
It's my understanding that we as a school will have one overall person that we connect with. There will be connections with, for example, the operations manager for like a monthly upload of something in a verification. They'll obviously connect with me on the reporting that goes out, but it's my understanding that they assign one person to the school on their team, and that's the direct contact.
So there's like a hidden line for all different buckets between some of these other pieces going on. It's not just like blowing up on you with all this.
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, one of the concerns that we had was, we don't want to partner with someone that's going to continue to be more work for us, especially at that price point. That's not going to work. So no, we have, there's been communication with other charter schools. We've communicated with them. They're very used to operating in this space. They know that we don't have time to do some of the heavy lift that they need to do. All of that back end work happens with them. We're supposed to just have one contact. Now, again, as we're transitioning during that transition phase, I'm sure there's going to be 2 or 3 people that we're talking with, but the contract manager or the provider for them is supposed to be just the one person.
There's that team lead that works on their end as well. He's in the main, it's up to them. He comes back here.
Okay, question, what does the org chart look like today? How many people do you have reporting to you today?
Well, it's basically this and all of this in a straight line down, with the exception of whatever is new. So not this, or this. Joe and I talk a lot, but this is literally, it's just me, straight line down, everybody reports up to me. There is really no delineation of supervision. Ms. Mag this year, in her role as the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, has done additional evaluation support for teachers, going in classrooms, things like that. But as far as direct responsibility, it's me and everyone under me.
Well, in the private sector, the rule of thumb is 6 or 7 direct reports. That's it. Nobody can successfully handle, oversee more than 6 or 7. At least that's the, rule of thumb in the private sector. So just, that looks a lot better than everyone reports to me.
Yes, it does. It also feels a little bit more manageable with things that Brigitte's done a really amazing job this year of like kicking me out of my office and telling me to go and connect with people in the community and kind of talk more about how TIMA is doing, how we're accomplishing, how we're moving forward. And of course, that's a time requirement. I gave an example recently to a group and just kind of talking about, I missed an opportunity for a development meeting earlier this year because of a commitment here, which is fine. It's, everything is my fault and I accept that responsibility. But I do wonder about opportunities that maybe are missed sometimes because the current structure is me and everybody else versus delineating some of that and growing people too, which is something that I care a lot about. It's not just growing teachers, which I am passionate about, but I would love to find opportunities to grow some of these other people in leadership of their colleagues. So this is the budget implications based on that request. I did want to, first of all, say thank you again to the board. The board approved $150,000 last year for an incentive package for teachers. That was very well received, as you might imagine, and perhaps part of the 100% return rate. Because we were able to work with teachers and say, there's a little bit more money here that can supplement what you're doing for kids every day. And in this space, what does that look like for you? If you're going to be incentivized, if you're going to have an opportunity to get more money for what you're doing, how can we make it appropriate for you? And the teachers gave us really good feedback, and we were able to design something that was very responsive for them that also attached itself to our goals. Now, not the 5 strategic goals specifically that we saw earlier, but the goals of the organization thus far. Moving forward, we've already talked about how those goals for them, the incentive plan, could lead directly to the strategic goals that we put out. But if the expenditure request for the new positions is approved, I would need about $10,000 more for the new positions that I just announced, the part-time and full-time. The contract finance is an offset for this first year because we already budgeted typically $22,000 a year for our finances. So it's about a $98,000 increase over last year's budget with $120,000 spent for the contracted financial services. Now, thank you everybody for approving the use of the grant funds for strategic growth that you did just a few minutes ago. That means that we have an allowable expenditure within that grant of $7,500 for new financial services. They certainly, when they're thinking about organizations growing, one of the things that they say is, well, you're going to need some support for finances. If you want to spend this money in this way, you can do that. Of course, they didn't give us a $120,000 grant, but they did give us enough that we have left over that we can spend $7,500. I asked Chief Hayes for an update because I knew that the city of Titan budget was released, but unfortunately Chief Hayes might have been off today. She had a busy weekend. So, so she did not get back today, which is uncharacteristic for Chief Hayes, I'm gonna tell you right now. However, when we last spoke, the approximate cost on a new officer was anywhere between $52,000 and $56,000 is what she was thinking. I think she was trying to get the officers a raise, which I totally support based on their work. But that means for the cost sharing for us, $41,600 would be the 180 days that students are in school. And then the additional staff roles that I talked about in the org chart leads us to a total of $345,995. So this is potentially what it looks like in the forecasted budget. Joe's watching me, so thanks, Joe. This is our revenue this year. And again, in grants, we said 20,000. I'm sorry, I misspoke earlier. I thought we said 175, said 185,000 for grants. In the coming year, we're going to budget 150,000 for fundraising. Again, thinking about what we've been able to accomplish this year. That certainly seems manageable for us and attainable for us. And so that is the potential budgeted revenue income for 2024. Also, when we were projecting this, and Laura and I have worked on the budget, just trying to get the preliminary numbers available for you, we have conservatively only estimated a 2% revenue increase from the governor's budget. We've been searching since they passed it a few weeks ago. I cannot tell you what the number is about what the actual increase to the budget was, but he did ask for full funding of QBE and should be able to be calculated into a percentage increase in how much they're going to give schools. But we said 2%.
Yeah, I was just going to add that 100 of that grants money was approved, $100,000 facilities for,
It's already.
is already approved in that budget for charter schools. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. So yes, of this 185,000, the legislator has passed. Obviously, we won't have that until the next fiscal year, but 100,000 has already been approved for charter schools for facilities, and we'll apply for that. And that is one of those things that each year we've been fortunate enough to receive. And so we conservatively said there would only be a 2% increase in revenue, but then when we got to personnel costs, we actually calculated a 4.5% increase in cost, because we know that the district is going to recommend at least a 2.5% cost of living adjustment and or step increase, and the governor said he wants to give everybody an extra $2,000. So we tried to calculate that in as a potential cost for us. Now, if it does come through from the governor, it's passed through in the budget, it won't impact us at all. But we wanted to go ahead and calculate for it just in case it's promised and we have to deliver it. Then, of course, instruction. And if you're wondering about the significant decline from instruction over last year, please remember $80,000+ of that was the iPads that you said that we could refresh for multiple grade levels. So it isn't that we just decided not to spend money on instruction. It's that we don't have to refresh iPads this year. We'll probably order 10. Operations, transportation. I'm going to pause here and say, transportation is a cost that we know we have to have. If we're going to have a diverse population of students that are able to come to our school, we have to provide transportation options. But I know that this body is very used to rolling anywhere from $200,000 to $400,000 a year into investment accounts. To date, I have not touched any of our investment accounts for operations, and we've been able to completely operate on budget and above budget all year for even the cost of transportation being calculated in Joe.
I want to help you out a little more, keep in mind, we are way under budget. So I'm thinking there's going to be a huge check coming our way every year.
I've been wearing them out for our mid-year adjustment, pretty much, as Laura is my witness, every day for the last 2 weeks, because we usually get it around now, and I was hoping to give you that information before now, but Joe is right. We'll also get a mid-year adjustment that will tell us where we are and what the district owes us, which I, like Joe, think that's going to be quite a large sum. And then, of course, we increase the cost of facilities because we know that we're in a negotiation point, but we also, utilities go up, and we have to be mindful, right? So that looks like, at the conclusion of this year thus far, we could have 220 net that we're going to roll into the investment, and the budget next year, even if you grant the expenditure request, would have us at netting 67,000 just as a baseline to start. Obviously, these are all preliminary numbers. The budget still has to be worked through, but I wanted to give you an expenditure request that would account for some of the spending before we presented that package. Questions? I know it was a lot. Sorry.
Excellent, thank you for sharing
Yeah,
the details.
Yeah, I mean, in other words, you can afford it, so, yeah.
And it's all for the betterment of the school, the students, everything.
Right.
It's needed.
So a couple of the things too, that this book is very complimentary about, even though we were named in the audit, financially did a complimentary about how we did the issue with, using free positions on, they were very complimentary about our staff and what we really worked with to get there. And they expressed a willingness to help wherever we found. So that being said, that bottom line, that cooperation between the district and us is excellent. Mr. Moss called me on the way home from here, and it was extremely complimentary of the school, the students, the staff, and was blown away that we were running this facility mostly out of our audience. So, another thing that came to surprise, I think, to the district's board is that we're not operating for transportation. And just know, I think there was a lot that came to light in the last 6 weeks that we didn't know, they didn't know, and there's definitely that cooperation and that level of trust between both organizations. So it's really nice. It helps a lot. So I can keep Peter out of his office.
They actually rate us. They have 12 departments that rate us on a scale of 1 through 4, and we get a perfect score in everyone except one department, but they won't tell me who that is. And I'm trying to figure it out. Send them some cookies, like something, a typing mug. But no, we're very fortunate. I think we have very good relationships with them. When I presented at the board, I know I started with that, but their questions were very thoughtful, and they engaged with me for quite a long time, longer than Laura and I think were really, because Laura had to stand up there with me too. Longer than I think we expected, but they were very thoughtful with the things that they wanted to know about how we were doing and what was happening with our school, and very complimentary of the things that they've seen. We were just at an event this weekend, and everyone, including the superintendent, came by. Dr. Thompson came by, of course. But it is very nice to know that we're continuing to work on our relationships with the LEA. They are very supportive of the work that we do. And so I'm looking forward to getting into this next year. And of course, January of 2024, we re-engage in the charter renewal process. So all of that is coming. It is also why it's really great to have these strategic goals. Thank you, approved this evening. because now we can start working on the alignment of what we expect of ourselves and where we hold ourselves accountable and how that aligns to the expectations from the board.
And again, we're back in a position where we will not be spending $30,000 or so for this business application. We are.
I already have a spreadsheet.
To do that, it's a ton of work. So, but I think as we work on it as we go, makes a difference. So please, questions.
There's also about 30 more slides if you got the PDF, if you want details on any of that.
So last year, Peter and I sat down and we were trying to decide how to do the budgeting and what would make the most sense. And I think traditionally we come to the table at budget time with what the changes were. And I just believe highlighting the changes that are going to happen is important for all of us. So we can deep dive into them and you can ask questions. Question Peter, if you disagree with something, you want to know more about something, this is really the time for everybody around the table to do that.
Or anything.
Do we need a motion though to approve the?
If there's no further questions, remarks, or
Sure, make a motion for the strategic planning, for the expenditure of the Peter's proposed.
second,
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Thank you.
And we are currently in, thank you, Mike. We are currently in discussion with St. Michael's and renewing the lease, so by the time I will circle back with you as soon as I know what that looks like. So they're working on there, and I think they have a facilities meeting tonight, so I should hear later this week. A couple more things. We have 2 more board meetings, May 22nd here and June 26th. And in addition, we'll have the first board meeting, the first financials budget reading on Monday the 12th, and the second one with the board meeting of the 26th. So those are probably the most important meetings for everybody to attend, so if we can.
You said the 12th?
The 12th will probably, yeah, that's the first reading, June 12th.
Is that, I thought you said, will that be your actual board meeting or?
It will be the first budget reading,
Okay.
and that will be the only topic. They have to happen within a certain sequence and certain time.
Last year, we did the first reading.
Yes, and we may be working on this year. So making those dates a priority, I would tremendously appreciate. We are almost at the end of April. That means we have 60 days left to finish our training. If you can all log on to Canvas, we will get dinged. I mean, it's one of the things that they look at and we'll get dinged, and it will stand in the way of our renewal. So
Can I ask, if you're having problems trying to, get the new stuff to come up and navigate the site?
I'll connect you with Ariana
Okay.
Clark, and then she can help you the best.
Perfect.
It's more confusing this year, I believe, than other years, actually. So
So
that's an
everything is
important
up
part.
now as far as us to go into, to do what we.
Yes, everything is.
Because I
online.
tried earlier, things just wasn't.
There was the stuff from last year. I didn't see
There's
any.
2 buttons on the top, one is 22 and one is 23, so you have to go to 23. I don't know why 22 is still there, it makes no
Should
sense.
put my glasses on.
You can say.
I know it's fun training, but, it's a ton of fun. There was no public comment for tonight, and then I do want to say that in case some of you don't know that our boys baseball team won the championship. We have our boys led by Mr. Logan Smith. Yes. So very strong finish. The girls softball team, I mean, we definitely ruled softball and baseball for that. Eighth grade graduation, the first one that we have coming up will be on May 25th at 6 o'clock. And it will be at Islands High. So if you are available to congratulate our 47 eighth grade,
Oh, wow.
I'm sure they would love it. Duff and I can speak for the fact that they're very good kids.
They are a great group.
And,
They really are.
okay, they are. So, it will be fun. It will be our first one. I mean, 6 o'clock, right?
Hi, Mark.
Try to be there.
I did want to say too, this Thursday evening, Mayor Sessions and City Council are going to recognize both softball and baseball champions here on the island at the City Council meeting. So, the kids are going, the coaches are going, they have plaques that the school gets to have the names of the students on the team and well as the coaches. We're going to put them right beside. And I do want to say, and as soon as I get more information, I'll share, but one of our parents has already reached out and they're going to build us a trophy case themselves. Yeah, for sure. So we're very excited about that. But that's this Thursday at the City Council meeting here on Tybee. Thanks to everyone.
And with that, anybody have any questions, remarks, things that they want to bring up?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.